then the likely answer here is at some point in your journey, either in childhood or in adulthood, perhaps you learned that deep, meaningful romantic relationships aren't safe for you. I'm Dr. Jessica Eastman, and this is an open Q&A. And everyone who's present to please join us by turning on your videos. So let's jump in. So this question says, hi, Dr. Jessica. I recently discovered that I avoid deep, meaningful romantic relationships. Initially, I thought this is simply because I'm picky and won't just settle and date anyone. Usually I'm the one that is friend zoning women and not engaging romantically. The problem with this is that as a result of rejecting people, I'm also hurting them. How can one overcome this fear/trauma of previous unsuccessful relationships? Any tips on building these kinds of relationships? Okay, so there are actually like three really enormous questions, I think, unintentionally lumped into this one question, so I will do my best. The first thing that I want to note here is that the question asker says the problem with not settling or dating anyone or avoiding deep, meaningful relationships is that I am rejecting people and therefore hurting them. And I think that I want to address this first, because the reality is, if you are honoring yourself and protecting your own boundaries, whether they are something that you'd like to change in the future or not, you can do it in a kind way. And it is our responsibility, I believe, as human beings to enact our boundaries in a kind way. But sometimes our enacting of our boundaries is going to hurt people, and that's the reality of life. And so I want to make sure, and the reason that I bring this up here is because choosing to try and change an entire behavior in this way, in terms of like, I want to reject fewer people because it's hurting them, is maybe not quite in alignment with what's going to serve you most long-term, because that's a behavior change that's driven or attempting to be driven based on other people's outcomes, which is something that you can't control, right? So what I would suggest first here is that we make sure, and in all circumstances, if you are deciding that you want to change a mindset or a behavior, that you are feeling compelled to and or motivated to do it because of something that matters to you, that is within your control. So then the second, how can one overcome the fear or trauma of previous unsuccessful relationships? Any tips on building these kinds of relationships? The first question I would ask here, a question back to your question, is why do you think that you avoid deep, meaningful romantic relationships? And so if you don't know the answer to that question, it's going to be hard to solve this problem, because the reality is, the way that I approach all of this work is that all feelings come from somewhere. Even if they don't make sense to you at first glance, they are logical and rooted in reason to some extent. And so if you have a history of avoiding deep and meaningful romantic relationships, then there is a reason for it, at least to some part of your brain. And when we continue that line of thinking and we interlay it with the scientific understanding of neuroscience and evolutionary neurological development, we look at the fact that most decisions are made, if you are not consciously aware of making them, most decisions are made by your subconscious mind in an effort to keep you safe. It's really the thing that your subconscious mind cares about the most, and in fact, almost exclusively, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean happy or optimally well. So if we accept those two premises, which is that all feelings come from somewhere, and likely if you've got some sort of unconscious behavior happening, it's because of perhaps a maladaptive, but an attempt nonetheless by your subconscious to keep you safe, then probably what we can conclude, if A plus B equals C, then the likely answer here is at some point in your journey, either in childhood or in adulthood, perhaps you learned that deep, meaningful romantic relationships aren't safe for you. And so that's where I would start my line of like inquiry and curiosity about what's coming up for you when you consider allowing yourself to be vulnerable and connecting with someone. But also factor in here that there are a lot of different components of deep and meaningful relationships, right? They require you to be vulnerable and share of yourself, which also requires you to know yourself well enough that you can share it. The natural reality of deep and meaningful romantic relationships, or deep and meaningful relationships of any type, also requires reciprocity and or interdependence, which means that maybe some of the challenges for you are relying on another person or trusting another person or feeling the weight of someone relying on or trusting you. And so these are I'm just throwing out examples here of what potentially might feel like the cause of why you're avoiding. But in my experience, the way to shift a behavior like that, if you want to stop avoiding deep and meaningful romantic relationships, is to do the work to understand why you were avoiding them in the first place. Because other than if we don't address it from that perspective, all we have left then is the attempts at trying to top down suppress your natural subconscious instincts, which, if we recall back to what I was saying a minute ago, are coming from a place of trying to keep you safe. And those instincts are incredibly strong. So that's one perspective. The other layer that you could run simultaneous to this is look at the relationships that you do have in your life, maybe non-romantic ones, friendship, family, colleagues, whatever. Look at the ones that you find the most meaningful and deep, or do like a general catalog assessment of the relationships in your life. How honestly and authentically are you showing up in them? Do you trust and or are relying on other people that you're in relationship with to show up for you? Do you ever ask people for help? Do they ever ask you for help? Or do they ever ask you to show up maybe when it's not entirely convenient for you, but in a way that makes you want to for them? Take some inventory here and see what your starting point is, and then start to really get curious about, okay, what are maybe the deficits that we need to work on and how do we build this? Because how to build a relationship is an enormous topic. And so we really have to figure out what is the starting point that we need to focus on.
Whenever you're ready, here are 4 ways that Porn Reboot can help you out for free. The first way is to subscribe to our channel and make sure that you click on the notification bell to get a new video every other day. The second way is to actually get a free copy of my book, Confessions of a Porn Addict, 7 Secrets of Porn-Free Men, where you'll learn about my personal struggle and the lessons I learned over the past 14 years, as well as get strategies for putting together your own personalized reboot plan and ending your compulsive behavior with pornography or masturbation. So click on the link in the description below this video to get the free ebook. And thirdly, if you're not sure where you'd like to start, but you'd like to learn more about my team and I, or you'd like to spend time with more like-minded professionals like entrepreneurs, business owners, men who work in sales or consulting or high-level jobs, men who are controlling their behavior, then join our free and confidential group, the Porn Reboot group on Facebook. There's also a link to join the group in the description below this video. And finally, if you need our help right now because you have a burning issue, it's an emergency, your behavior with pornography is hurting you mentally, you're about to lose your relationship and you want to live up to your potential or be an authentic man and free yourself from shame, guilt, and underachieving, then click on the link in the description below this video that actually says free coaching call, or visit elevatedrecovery.org and click on the link which says book a call.